The rain hit the city like drums of warning, heavy, rhythmic, deliberate. Julian Carter adjusted his cufflinks as he stepped out of the sleek black car. The marble entrance of the Elysian Grand Hotel gleamed in the stormlight. It wasn't just another luxury hotel. It was his. He had bought it 2 years ago through his holding company, a quiet acquisition under a shell corporation. No one here knew the face behind the ownership. Today, he'd finally decided to show up in person. No entourage, no announcements. Just a quiet visit to see how the crown jewel of his real estate empire was treating its guests. The moment he stepped through the revolving doors, a subtle shift occurred. The front desk clerk gave him a glance, then another, longer one. She straightened, her smile thinning into something artificial. Julian, dressed in a dark turtleneck under a tailored camel coat, approached calmly. He wasn't flashy. He didn't need to be. "Welcome to the Elysian Grand. Can I help you?" the woman asked, her tone polite but stiff. "Yes," Julian replied, voice even. "I have a reservation. Julian Carter." She tapped the keyboard. Her brow furrowed. Then her eyes narrowed. "I'm sorry. I don't see any reservation under that name." Julian smiled, already sensing the tension in the air. "Try checking under JC Holdings." Her fingers hovered. But instead of checking, she hesitated, then said, "Look, I don't know what game you're playing, but this isn't that kind of hotel. Maybe you're in the wrong place." "Wrong place?" Before Julian could answer, a tall man in a cheap navy suit, security, approached. "Sir," the man said firmly, "we're going to have to ask you to leave." Julian turned to him slowly. "Is there a problem?" "You're making our staff uncomfortable. And frankly, this isn't the kind of establishment that tolerates loitering." Julian blinked once. The clerk wouldn't meet his eyes. A second security guard appeared near the elevator. Guests in the lobby glanced over, some whispering. Julian said nothing. He looked down at his watch. 5 minutes, he murmured under his breath. Then, without protest, he turned and walked out into the rain. What the staff didn't know was that 5 minutes earlier, as Julian had stepped out of the car, a system-wide alert had been issued from his assistant's phone to his executives. "Initiate Audit Protocol Delta." It wasn't just a visit. It was a loyalty test. Inside the executive penthouse across the city, the real-time surveillance feed showed everything. Front desk audio, staff room chatter, even body cam footage from Julian's hidden lapel pin. And what it revealed was ugly. The front desk clerk had made 3 offhand racial remarks after Julian left. The head of security, who had barely concealed his disdain, laughed and called him another one of those TikTok clout chasers. Staff in the break room joked about certain types of people trying to pretend they belong. They had no idea they were being recorded. By the time Julian got back into his car, his assistant, Mara, was already on the line. "Should I proceed?" she asked. Julian's voice was ice. "Clear the rot." 20 minutes later, a new black SUV pulled into the hotel entrance. A sharply dressed woman stepped out, followed by 4 legal representatives in gray suits. They walked straight to the manager's office. "Who are you?" the manager demanded. She handed him a document, a sealed directive with the Elysian Grand's corporate crest. The manager's face turned pale. Effective immediately. The hotel was under emergency restructuring. 17 staff members, from security to management, were terminated on the spot. Keys were revoked. Exit protocols began. In the middle of this chaos, the front desk clerk stood frozen. Her hands trembled as she watched the building collapse around her. And then, just as the glass doors hissed open again, Julian Carter walked back in. Calm. Silent. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence said everything. When their eyes met, the clerk looked like she wanted to vanish. Julian turned to Mara. "Bring in the new interim team. I want this place retrained from the ground up." Mara nodded and stepped away to coordinate. As Julian moved through the lobby, staff still remaining lowered their gazes. He walked with purpose, his footsteps echoing across the polished floor. In a matter of minutes, the hotel had gone from elegant to exposed, a thin shell housing prejudice, ignorance, and entitlement. Julian had built his empire brick by brick. He had eaten at the tables they wouldn't let him sit at. Now he owned those tables. And when the world tried to remind him where it thought he belonged, he simply reminded it who held the keys. Julian made his way to the penthouse suite, his suite. It had been locked down since the beginning of the audit. Only the biometric scanner on his wristwatch could open the private elevator that led there. As he stepped inside, the elevator doors closed behind him with a whisper. Silence, but the kind of silence that hummed with justice. When he reached the top, the doors opened to reveal a floor bathed in soft golden light. No staff, no noise, just the wide glass windows revealing the storm outside and the quiet hum of authority inside. He stepped over to the grand liquor cabinet, poured himself a glass of Glenfiddich 30-year, and sat. It was more than just a firing, more than just a power move. Julian had once stood on the other side of the glass, the side where people looked at him and saw nothing but a threat or a nuisance. He knew that world intimately. He'd lived it, breathed it, endured it, but he'd never let it define him. And now, with a sip of that smoky velvet drink, he closed that chapter again, calmly as he always did. His phone buzzed. A message from Mara. Restructuring underway. Remaining staff are compliant. Full retraining begins Monday. PR statement drafted per your request. A change in leadership and culture. Julian responded with a single word. Approved. Downstairs, the new interim management team arrived. Each one handpicked, each one briefed. Their job was not just to run a hotel, but to rebuild a culture. One that didn't judge by skin. One that didn't mistake class for color. But the real moment came 3 days later. Julian returned, this time in a perfectly tailored three-piece charcoal suit, his presence unmistakable, his name already known. The new front desk manager, a poised, middle-aged woman with professionalism etched into her every move, greeted him with warmth and respect. "Welcome back, Mr. Carter. Your suite is ready." Julian smiled. "Thank you." Guests in the lobby whispered, this time in awe. Some recognized him. Others Googled him on the spot. They saw headlines. Billionaire real estate mogul. Julian Carter restructures hotel after incident. Hotel staff fired after mistaking owner for trespasser. CEO delivers quiet but powerful statement on respect and equality. Julian didn't do interviews. He didn't need to. As he rode the elevator back to the penthouse, a young bellhop, one of the new hires, stood beside him in silence. Nervous. Julian glanced at him. "First week?" he asked. The bellhop nodded quickly. "Yes, sir, just started. I heard what happened." Julian raised an eyebrow. "And what did you hear?" The bellhop took a breath, then said, "That you don't raise your voice. You raise standards." Julian let out a short, quiet laugh. "Good answer." The doors opened. The bellhop stepped aside. Julian walked out, turned back just once, and said, "Remember that. It'll take you far." Then he disappeared into the suite above the city, the same city that once tried to keep him out, now owned in silence by the man it had underestimated. Justice hadn't knocked loudly. It had walked in, fired the staff, and taken back the keys. Thanks for watching this powerful story. If you enjoyed it and want more dramatic, thought-provoking tales like this, don't forget to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. New stories drop regularly, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Hit that bell icon so you're the first to know. See you in the next one.